All right, they're 1-3. They're 1-3, and they're headed over to London to take on the Minnesota Vikings. What do you think, Caroline? You a fan of the timing of the Dillon Gabriel move?
Things aren't going to get any better. And we even talked about it on this show before the news and rumblings came out that Dillon Gabriel was going to get the starting job. We had this exact conversation yesterday. And we talked about, look, Joe Flacco's not going to win you very many games. So that's either an indictment on the development or some of these young quarterbacks, or Kevin Stefanski is just kind of sitting on his hands, not wanting to make a move at the quarterback position. So I think this says a couple of things. One, Dillon Gabriel's ready, but he is ready to get some live action and get his first start in the NFL. Two, they acknowledge that the Joe Flacco experiment is not a very good one. And I think they also kind of look around at the division and say, hey, why not us? I think it's time for them to figure out what they have and who they have in their young quarterbacks. And if it's not going to get any better, and if you're not going to ride the lack of a hot hand that is Joe Flacco, then why not now? I think it's a good move.
Look, I think inevitably at some point this was probably going to happen. Orlovsky says only choice left again. His preseason tape was really strong. See what he does with this opportunity. I hear all of that. I will say you're going to London, and we always talk about how going to an international spot is a little different on your body clock. London is 5 hours ahead of Cleveland, so I know they play the game early in the morning, so that negates some of it, but you are still talking about weird body clock issues as everybody gets all the way across the pond to play a football game, and you're taking on one of the better defensive coordinators, one of the most respected coordinators in the NFL, which Vikings have in this game. So I don't feel like it's necessarily a great spot for any rookie quarterback. Let me say that, like whether it's Dillon Gabriel or anybody else, I don't think you could write it in the history books and be like, you know where I want my first start for my rookie quarterback to be? In London, taking on the Vikings with that prep. The Vikings, who, by the way, have already been in the UK for the last week. They went from Dublin to London. That is a short, 25-minute flight. So we're talking about an easy transport for the Vikings. The Vikings are already acclimated. So a non-acclimated team taking on an acclimated team, taking on that defensive coordinator on an international game. Like, I don't love any of that, but I also have to acknowledge that the Browns' offense is broken. And at some point, what I've said, and I will be consistent on, is if you see the things in practice that tell you that he's ready to start him. And until you see those things, don't start him. So I don't love the concept of starting Dillon Gabriel just because Joe Flacco has been bad. But if they've seen enough from Dillon Gabriel where they feel comfortable, I also don't think that you just sit him around and make him wait. So I hope he makes the most of the moment. I just think it's a tall ask for a rookie quarterback.
Didn't we say the same thing about Jaxson Dart last week? That he's
Yeah,
going to get
that's
his
fair.
first start against the Chargers. Like, that doesn't seem very fair. And I would agree with you that there are a lot of factors working against Dillon Gabriel. Your very first start, it's overseas, it's against that defensive coordinator and Brian Flores. Like, there's a lot of things working against you. But then again, there's just a lot of things working against you as a quarterback in the NFL in general. So at some point, you have to get out there and learn. And I am always pro sit the rookie quarterback as long as you possibly can or as long as he possibly needs. But if not now, when? I'll keep going back to that because next week they go to Pittsburgh. You want Dillon Gabriel to get his first start against, frankly, in a defense that's probably been not as good as anticipated, but they've got a whole lot of dogs in that defense. The Pittsburgh Steelers have invested a whole mess of money into that defense, and going to Pittsburgh is not an easy place to play. And it's not like the Cleveland Browns get a whole lot of breaths of fresh air. You know, Baltimore, and I know Baltimore has fallen short of expectations, but it is still the Ravens. You take on San Francisco, you take on Buffalo. So, let Dillon Gabriel get some live in action game work. If he's ready, let him get out there, let him learn from it, which kind of brings me the question. Of course, a lot of things working against Dillon Gabriel, but I don't think it's fair for Cleveland Browns fans to expect Dillon Gabriel to just go out there and sling it for 375 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's not a fair expectation. Dillon Gabriel is not and shouldn't be single-handedly responsible for pulling the Cleveland Browns out of a 1-3 hole.
And that's where, if you go back to Jaxson Dart, who you just mentioned, Jaxson Dart in that first game completed 65% of his passes, had some nice runs. but he threw for 111 yards. Like we are blowing up Jaxson Dart like he is the answer. He threw for 111 yards. So I think a little bit of context there. He threw for 111 yards in front of a home crowd that was juiced. Like I've got Giants fans in my life that I know drove over to MetLife and they tailgated and they spent an enormous amount of money just to see Jaxson Dart's first game. There was that level of hype for a first round quarterback. I don't know what the realistic expectation should be for Dillon Gabriel, but I don't think that it's fair to look at it and say, you know what, the reason this offense is struggling is because Joe Flacco isn't good enough. Like there's so many other elements to an offense than just Joe Flacco. So I just temper expectations. And then I wonder, like, how quickly is everybody going to give up on Dillon? What level of success will it take for Dillon Gabriel to have for the world to shut up about Shedeur Sanders for the rest of the year? I don't think there's an answer to that. If Dillon goes out and has one bad drive, this is the weirdest part of what the Browns created, and this is only Cleveland's fault. Nobody but Cleveland to blame for this. But the minute you drafted Shedeur in the 5th round, you created a pressure sandwich. Because now, if Dillon Gabriel goes out and has a bad game, well, okay, do you bench him for Flacco to come in and try and help you because Flacco's got experience, or do you bench him and put in Shedeur? And if Shedeur gets in, now is Shedeur battling Dillon and whatever the ghost of Flacco is? Like, this gets so complicated. Like, there is one outcome that works great for Dillon Gabriel, and that's it. He comes in and he just obviously is the answer. But how many rookie quarterbacks are obviously the answer? How many rookie quarterbacks drafted in the 3rd round are obviously the answer? Hell, if you want to go 3rd round or later, I think the most recent example of a quarterback we've had that's really become an epic starter that was drafted 3rd round or later is Dak. And he wouldn't have even gotten that opportunity were it not for injury. Like, he needed somebody to be injured to give a 4th round quarterback that much runway. Like, how much runway is Dillon Gabriel even going to get? If we're saying that Dillon Gabriel is a starter for the rest of the year, then I love this move. If Kevin Stefanski comes out and says, this is our guy, we will build around him, then I love it because we at least get a chance to see the kid succeed. What I fear here, and I don't care whether it was Dillon or Shedeur that got the reps first, what I fear is that 2.5 bad games, and he's going to take on some good defenses along the way. If he just sucks against the Vikings, are we all going to give up on Dillon Gabriel after 1 week? The answer to that, largely from popular culture, is going to be yes. If he goes out and throws for 88 yards, 2 picks against a great Vikings defense, immediately it's going to be he sucks, start Shedeur. And this is the personal hell for Browns fans for the rest of the year. I feel bad for everybody.
The fact that we are even having a conversation about the Browns making yet another quarterback change before Dillon Gabriel even takes a snap in a Browns uniform, I think is the perfect example of why you don't draft 2 quarterbacks in the same draft class, especially when one of them is a celebrity and is going to be, part of the conversation no matter what. We have talked more about Shedeur Sanders than any other 5th round pick in the history of the NFL. We might be talking about Shedeur Sanders more than any other quarterback that's ever been drafted in the NFL, and he was a 5th rounder. That's what he was. I understand who Shedeur Sanders' father is. I understand that Shedeur Sanders is a legitimate celebrity and anything he says and does is going to be a headline. But let's just look at it through the lens of what college football, an NFL coach has to look at it. My 3rd round quarterback and my 5th round quarterback. Our quarterback that we want to prioritize in Dillon Gabriel versus a quarterback who we are prioritizing his development more than getting out on the football field. Like, that is what we are talking about. And I think that is so unfair to Dillon Gabriel that as soon as he gets an opportunity, we just all of a sudden turn to Shedeur Sanders. Will Shedeur Sanders' day in the NFL come? For his sake, I hope so. I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, hope so. But as soon as you make a change at quarterback, I don't think you can go back. And if Dillon Gabriel's leash is so short that we start talking about Shedeur Sanders taking over, you cannot just go back to Dillon Gabriel. Because now all of a sudden, both of these guys are constantly looking over their backs. Both of these guys are afraid to make mistakes. And making mistakes is an integral part of being a young and developing rookie quarterback.
I continually have said and will continue to say on this show, take the names away and just ask the situation. My offense is struggling. I need my 3rd round quarterback that I drafted this year, just a few months ago, to come in and save my playoff chances. Think of how asinine that sounds when you say it that way. Oh, wait, if it doesn't work, my 5th round quarterback will come in and he'll be the one to save us. What are we talking about? And if your answer is Shedeur never should have been a 5th round pick, based on what? We have no idea yet whether or not that's actually true. Maybe, maybe Brock Purdy shouldn't have been a 7th round pick too. But if that's the way you're going to run your franchise, you're going to have a problem. And if your answer to all of that is your coaches are keeping everybody on the bench because they just don't want to play, so if you really believe that Kevin Stefanski isn't doing the best for the Cleveland Browns to win football games every Sunday, then what you really want is your favorite team to fire your head coach. Because if that's what your head coach is doing, it's a disaster. When you peel all of the emotion that comes with the name Shedeur Sanders away, I don't even think we would collectively give the slightest bit of a damn if Dillon Gabriel was starting for any other team this week. It's a vessel to get everybody to yell more about Shedeur, which is why we care about it. That being said, the over-under on it, 36.5. Vegas thinks it's going to be a low-scoring game. Could be, yeah. Well,
I would
hammer
take
the
the
first
under.
half under. Hammer the first half under. That's the one thing we know. Hammer the first half under.